The US president is shifting nuclear submarines closer to Russia. What does this mean? Let's find out. Recently, the US President Donald Trump has been in an online spat with Mr. Medvedev, who is a former Russian politician, is not considered official policymaker in Russia, but does have some influence. And he basically made a mention that the US has to be careful because the tactics it's taking is bringing it one step closer to war with Russia. Now, Donald Trump quickly said, well, based on that, I'm going to be moving nuclear subs close to Russia because words have consequences, and this is why I'm going to take this action. The reason this is significant is because the location of US submarines is something that's rarely talked about. It's extremely secret. They're very hard to find. I'm guessing he's talking about the Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines. Now, these are very substantial US submarines that sit deep underwater in protected areas and basically wait to surface on the order of the US president and fire nuclear weapons at countries and adversaries. Now, the reason they're so hard to find is because the US protects these as part of their nuclear triad. The nuclear triad covers three arms. It talks about its bomber campaigns and air-delivered nuclear weapons. It talks about submarine-delivered nuclear weapons, and it talks about basically missile silos that are able to deliver intercontinental ballistic missiles to targets around the world. The US spent many decades and a lot of cost building up this nuclear triad. The reason they built it is because it was going to assure basically any attack against the United States would be met with defeat. You couldn't launch what they would call a decapitation strike, where you would just take out the nuclear missiles in one hit of your opponents. You would actually have to deal with all three elements of this nuclear triad, and that's what makes it so dangerous. So, bringing us back to the US president, it's very, very rare and very unusual that they would mention moving a location of a submarine closer to another country. So this is designed to, they're playing games. This is a signaling game to signal to Russia rather that the US is also heavily armed, and I think the previous administration was less willing to enforce some of those boundaries and push back harder against Russia when they were engaging in what you call nuclear saber rattling. The other interesting part of this is President Putin made reference to something called the dead hand. If you read this book by Annie Jacobsen, you'll hear about the dead hand nuclear weapons switch. What it means is it's basically a computer program, a triggering device basically that will ensure that in the event that all arms, all aspects of the Russian nuclear arsenal are taken out or destroyed, or the headquarters are destroyed, the missiles will be automatically fired from Russia towards targets in the United States. The reason this is so serious is because it takes human control out of the chain of use for nuclear weapons. Now, you can imagine how dangerous that is. It basically means that even if you do successfully strike or do a surprise strike on Russia, they have this automated system. Whether the US has it or not, I don't know, but it is quite an ominous sign that they are willing to have an automated system that can fire these missiles out. So that's just an interesting point on nuclear strategy, which is not that common, and it's hard to find information on. It's just coming to light now. Going back to the Ohio-class submarines, really substantial, really large ships. I actually served with a guy that was an engineer on one of these subs. I went to the Wharton School of Business with him. Really interesting guy. But these submarines will sit deep in bastions in the ocean, and they're designed to sit submerged and receive orders from ultra-low frequency radio stations, one being in Australia in Exmouth that actually handles ultra-low radio frequency comms to any submarines that are in the southern hemisphere. That's what issues the orders for them to surface, commence an authentication, and then commence nuclear targeting operations. So, pretty serious platform. The US protects them. They've got a nickname. They're called the Handmaidens of the Apocalypse, which is a pretty cool nickname, I think. Really scary level of force they have. So there's 14 of these Ohio-class submarines. They carry about 20 Trident II D5 ballistic missiles. These Trident ballistic missiles have what are called MIRVs in them, multiple independent re-entry vehicles. So each missile has a number, individual warheads capable of individual targeting in these missiles. That can basically means that instead of 20 Tridents, they've got around 100 plus warheads that can hit different targets. So Annie Jacobsen was saying that each one of these submarines is as dangerous or as powerful as the asteroid that hit the Earth during the dinosaur period and basically led to a mass extinction. That's how much firepower these ships carry. More firepower than has ever been used in the history of war. And there's a couple of good movies on this. Crimson Tide is one of the great ones. But yeah, really interesting update coming from the US, talking about our high-class missile submarines being shifted closer to Russia. Again, this kind of ties up with a video I made recently about the potential for state-on-state conflict at a global level. I think it potentially is already underway. So definitely watch this space. Super interesting. And hopefully it doesn't escalate any further, but thought I'd send you that update. See you soon.